Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for another day of life. You've heard all the needs, and you know Satan's on the ground attacking. I pray that you keep him back. Help us understand your word. And let us have your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.
I want to go through what we've covered with Esther, just bring it to a conclusion and end up with a line of Esther and then put some other lines underneath it. So this here is the seven thunders as represented by Manasseh, Ammon, Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah. Manasseh represents the progressive fall of the literal glorious land. Manasseh being the seventh of the last 6 kings. And in this sense, this history here, these 7 last kings of Judah, which in the Bible is called the glorious land, is the 7 thunders. And when Manasseh is carried to Babylon, he begins the 2520 that leads us to the Millerite history, where you have 1798 to 1844, and in 1844, the first horn of the spiritual glorious land is removed when the Protestants reject the first angel's message. And Sister White tells us that the history of the first and second angel's message is the 7 thunders, but she says the 7 thunders also relate to future events that will be disclosed in their order. This being the beginning of Adventism, this being the end of Adventism, takes us to our history. So this too is an illustration of the 7 thunders. We have 3 witnesses here of the 7 thunders, but we have also recognized that the last 7 kings of Israel represents the 11th hour workers and also the 7 thunders. This being who? Jeroboam 2. Going down to Hoshea. And this being Zedekiah and Zedekiah. So, in Revelation 10, let's read that. I wanted to read that. I got ahead of myself. Revelation 10. No, let's read Revelation 5. Let's just walk through it real quickly. Verses, Revelation 5. Brother Mark, read verses 4 and 5 of Revelation 5 for us.
And I wept much because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders saith unto me, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof.
In chapter 4 of Revelation, John sees God the Father sitting upon the throne in heaven, and in his hand he has a book that's sealed with 7 seals. The story continues right into chapter 5, and in chapter 5, John's going to witness the Lion of the tribe of Judah, which is Christ, unsealing this book. And what does he do before he sees Christ, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, unsealing the book? He weeps much, okay? And this is to be noted because in William Miller's dream, the dirt brush man in William Miller's dream is the Lion of the tribe of Judah that's going to come in and unseal the traditions and customs that have covered up the foundational truths of Adventism from this history that began to get covered up in 1863. But in William Miller's dream, the dirt brush man doesn't come in until William Miller weeps. So William Miller weeping has been typified by John weeping. When John weeps here, then the book of Daniel is unsealed in 1798 for the Millerite history. When Miller weeps here, then the 7 thunders is opened up for our history. But what I want you to see here is in verse 5, what is Christ? Not the root of David, what is he? He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So let's go to chapter 10. And Brother Chuck, would you read verses 1 through 4 of chapter, not Brother Chuck, Brother Jim. You guys reverse tables on me. Verses 1 through 4. Revelation 10, verses 1 through 4.
And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was on his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. And he had in his hand a little book open, and he set his right foot upon the sea, and his left foot upon the earth. And I cried with a loud voice, as with a lion, as when a lion roareth. And when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. And when the 7 thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not.
Okay, so what I want you to see, among other things, there is Sister White tells us that this angel that comes down out of heaven is no less a personage than Jesus Christ. But when he cries, what's he cry as? He's a lion. So this is the Lion of the tribe of Judah in chapter 5. And here, in this story of the Lion of the tribe of Judah in chapter 10, he's going to seal up a book, but when he's first introduced in chapter 5, what's he doing? Unsealing a book, because the Lion of the tribe of Judah is the one that seals up God's word. He's the one that unseals it. Okay, so in chapter 4 of Revelation, there's a book sealed with 7 seals, but as the chapters progress, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Jesus, is going to unseal these seals. So by the time he gets to chapter 8, the 7th seal has been removed from that book, so it's no longer sealed. The only thing in the book of Revelation that is sealed up is these 7 thunders. There's a pronouncement to seal them up. So Sister Christy, would you read Revelation 22, verses 9 and 10.
Then saith he unto me, see thou do it not, for I am thy fellow servant, and of thy brethren the prophets, and of them which keep the sayings of this book worship God. And he saith unto me, seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand.
One more.
He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still.
So right before the close of human probation, there is a pronouncement, and there's a time. It says the time is at hand when the prophecy in the book of Revelation that's been sealed up is going to be unsealed. And I'm saying it's unsealed in 1989, the time of the end for our history. Because the Millerite history teaches us that at the time of the end in the Millerite history, the book of Daniel was unsealed. So what is unsealed just before human probation closes is the 7 thunders, and we read yesterday that the 7 thunders represented the lineation of events that would transpire under the first and second angel's messages. This is the Millerite history from 1798 to 1844. And 9/11, by the way, is where the second horn of the United States goes down. But Sister White also says that the 7 thunders represent future events that will be disclosed in no order. That's 1989 to the Sunday law. But this is the beginning and the ending of Adventism. And in the beginning of ending of Adventism, the 2 horns of the United States get conquered, Protestantism and Republicanism. But the Protestants get conquered in Millerite history during the time of the second angel. And the second angel's message is Babylon is fallen, and Sister White tells us that though the church has suffered a moral fall in the Millerite history here, during the time period of the second angel, that the fall of Babylon wasn't complete and that it's progressive. So the complete fall of Babylon in terms of the glorious land, the spiritual glorious land of the United States, takes place in our history. From 9/11 to the Sunday law, this is the final falling of the United States. So in the beginning of Adventism and the end of Adventism, we have the twice repeated the seven thunders, and what it's illustrating is a progressive fall of the spiritual glorious land, and it is put in that context by the last 7 kings of Judah, starting with Manasseh. Manasseh, Sister White says, is an earnest of what was to come to Judah. He was carried to Babylon, but he was typifying what was going to happen with Zedekiah. And in so doing, he is showing a progressive fall of the literal glorious land, and his prophecy of the 2520 comes into the history of the United States, showing a progressive fall of the glorious land. So these 7 thunders, among other things, are emphasizing a progressive fall of the United States. But this 7 thunders, the last 7 kings, not of Judah, but of Israel, beginning with Jeroboam II, is dealing with the 11th hour workers, and in connection with this, it's showing us where the 2 sticks come together. So there's another line of truth connected with this revelation of the 7 thunders. But as we came into Esther, we find the 7 thunders represented in these 7 Persian kings that were in history, from Cyrus, who gave the first decree, through Darius that gave the second decree, to Artaxerxes, who gave the third decree. So we know that these 3 decrees here, at this decree, you begin the 2300 year prophecy, and it brings you also to right here. Okay, so at the end of these 7 kings, you have the 2300 year prophecy that brings you to the same point in time that this 2520 brings you to. So we're seeing another revelation of the 7 thunders, but in this revelation, the emphasis is perhaps upon these 3 decrees. Maybe we haven't figured out perfectly what the primary theme of this revelation of the 7 thunders is, but it has something to do with the decrees, okay? So in the book of Esther, we see a fractal of all this, right? And the what we're seeing in the book of Esther is an emphasis on the decrees. And we're pulling this history out of this 7 thunders, which is emphasizing the decrees. Everyone with me? So in Esther, this history, I'm arguing, is a fractal. It's an emphasis of we have found that all 7 of these kings represent the 7 thunders, but these 4 kings can be marked from 1840 to 1844, because they're also marked from 1798 to 1844, 1989 to the Sunday Law, but they're, what is it called? Non-identical.
Non-identical.
Okay, so we see that these 4 kings, the first one and the last 3, also can be placed in here, because this history has connection to the number 4. Not necessarily in that order, but they're there. And that is what we are seeing in the story of Esther in terms of the portion of this history that is being emphasized. We're seeing the history of 1840 to 1844, which in our history is the history of 9/11 to the Sunday Law. Of course, Esther goes beyond the Sunday Law to the close of human probation and the death decree. Okay, in Esther, we have found that You know, I wanted to pull out a quote, but maybe most of you are familiar with it. And this is a paraphrase, but some of the words I'm going to use are correct. Sister White says something like this: we may not be able to explain every symbol in the book of Revelation. If you put symbol in the book of Revelation, we'd pull it up probably. But we are to preach and teach the book of Revelation. So in this story of Esther, we can't explain everything that's been typified there, but it doesn't prevent us from teaching it, because Sister White says that's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to wait till you think you have every symbol identified. It can't be done by human beings. So we're marking 9/11 as the beginning of this story in Esther. And what was our justification for doing so?
What was your question? There was 3 of them, right?
What was our justification for placing the beginning of the prophetic illustration in Esther at 9/11? Why aren't we putting it in 1989 or starting it at the Midnight Cry?
Because it's a feast of 180
First day,
days,
first month.
the first chapter.
There's a feast of 180 days, so what? Why does that?
Because the 6 months of Elizabeth's pregnancy that leads to the Midnight Cry.
6 months of Elizabeth's pregnancy leads to the Midnight Cry. So we have a second witness, 6 months being 180 days, that in the story of Elizabeth, that this represents a time period of 9/11 to the Midnight Cry. Is there any other references? Okay, the 180 days feast is followed by a doubling of feast of 7 days. We know that in that part of the story.
Could it be the new light that had came to her, or it came down to, what's his name?
Mordecai?
Well, we know it's the time of the wise. It's the parable of Matthew 25, because we have a woman who refuses to come to the feast. So we have that as a symbol.
Okay, in Matthew 25, where do we see any woman that refuses to come to the feast?
The virgins. Well, it's inferred through Sister White. She elaborates on that.
There is a parable.
There is a parable of a call to the wedding feast, but it's not Matthew 25, is it? Matthew 22. Our Xerxes the Great here, Ahasuerus, okay, he's going to call Vashti in and she's going to refuse to come. So you're saying that this is typifying the call to the wedding in Matthew 22, but you're also, you know that because it's the call to the wedding in that parable, you bring every line up on one subject together. So you have Matthew 25. Where can you see Matthew 25 in this story?
You've also got Mordecai, who, you've got Mordecai, because Sister White tells us the triumphal entry is the
we'll see Mordecai typifying the triumphal entry, but where do you see a reference to Matthew 25's parable of the 10 virgins? This is a class, and you guys are being tested, and you don't realize that. What?
There's a call once Vashti refuses the kingdom of Satan. There's another call goes out. In fact, there's another 2 calls goes out to 2 groups of virgins.
Okay, 2 groups of virgins. You're almost there. How are we going to express that?
Gathered.
There's 2 gatherings of virgins. The virgins are gathered twice. Okay, so we've seen this as that at one level, this is 12 months, right? That takes you to here. So Esther is a group of virgins that's gathered here with the first call, but there's another gathering of the virgins here when the door closes. All right, we know that there's 2 gatherings, but also we've seen the fractal that in this history there is also justification for 12 months here. So you can see here a gathering here and a gathering here of the virgins. There's two groups, two calls to the virgins. So when in the 12 months, if you apply it from the 9/11 to the Sunday law, and Esther represents those virgins that are gathered here, that ultimately are going to be married to the king here, in that case, who does Esther typify? Pardon me?
The priest or no, the
She
Levites?
typifies the
Okay.
Priest.
Adventism as a whole.
Adventism as a whole. This is because this is the broad line of the parable of the 10 virgins. Okay, this is Adventism as a whole. This is the wise virgins of Adventism,
Right.
that they respond. Okay, now at this level, who does she typify?
The priest.
The priest. Okay, why are we saying that?
Because the priests and Levites are separated.
Okay, you're saying the priests are here and the Levites are here. Why? What biblical justification do we have for that? Where do we find that?
Zechariah 12, the Lord specifically identifies and separates them.
Ezra too, didn't none of the Levites came out and they had to wait for their to come.
That may be part of the story, but
The messenger of
The priests are
first.
Levites as well. The Levites as a whole, but the priests are a specific group within the Levites.
they're all Levites. But Zechariah 12, what? This is where you break up the two groups? Zechariah 12?
Yeah.
Show it to us. Zechariah 12, what?
It's the whole chapter talks about it.
What about 2 Chronicles?
29.
Yeah, there's other ones. This one is nice because it,
Zechariah 12.
yeah.
Who?
Because it's talking about.
Okay, read it to us.
In verse 2, it says, Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about when they shall be in the siege both against. Oh, sorry. Do the peace of Judah and Jerusalem. Forget that. I wonder why I'm not saying that.
Why, I was saying what?
Yeah, that's okay.
So,
Yeah, I'm talking.
go to 2 Chronicles 29. Now, what he's saying is correct because the priests represent what?
Judah.
Judah. And the Levites represent Jerusalem. He's going to the argument to show that these two periods of time are Judah and Jerusalem. But I was asking for priests. In 2 Chronicles 29, Sister Kathy, is it your turn to... Who's read?
He read.
Did Christy read?
He read that.
All right, Sister Kathy, 2 Chronicles 29,
Or you can start off with that.
yeah, 15 through... Yeah, that'll probably do it. 15 through 17.
And they gathered their brethren and sanctified themselves, and came, according to the commandment of the king, by the words of the Lord, to cleanse the house of the Lord. And the priests went into the inner part of the house of the Lord to cleanse it, and brought out all the cleanness that they had found in the temple of the Lord into the court of the house of the Lord. And the Levites took it to carry it out abroad into the brook Kidron. Now they began on the first day of the first month to sanctify, and on the 8th day of the month came they to the porch of the Lord. So they sanctified the house of the Lord in 8 days, and in the 16th day of the first month they made an end.
So if you read this entire chapter, this is talking about a work that's carried out in 16 days, in 8 days here and 8 days here. The sanctuary is cleansed, and the priests in the sanctuary cleansed in the first 8 days. The Levites cleansed the courtyard in 8 days, equaling 16 days, which brings you to the 16th day of the first month, because the first day of the first month is marked here, and we know that 9/11 is the first day of the first month So when you get to the 16th day of the first month, where are you at?
You're at
The
the
second
first,
one.
the day of first fruits.
This is the Feast of First Fruits? And who are the first fruits?
From 9/11 to the midnight cry.
The 144,000. And they're developed from 9/11 to the Sunday law, but they're developed in two steps. The priests are purified first, then the Levites. Therefore, when we're seeing, what were we saying about Esther in here?
We were trying to prove
She
the two
represents two
classes
different
of
groups.
gatherings.
Two gatherings, okay? A gathering here of the priests, a gathering here of the Levites.
Jeff, you know, when we do it the way of the law, right, when we have the first one and we have it as a fractal, you got a gathering there at 9/11, but when they're gathered, they go through a three-step testing process. And then they're gathered again, the midnight cry, they go through a three-step testing process. Now that's fine, but they're gathered at 9/11 on the larger one, and they go through this larger three-step testing process. So my only question would be, if we're putting it that way, and we have a gathering again at the Sunday law, now I know that they're, you know, in one sense they're gathered in, but where would be the three-step testing process? If it was marking a second gathering, because they're called.
So here, it's 9/11.
Yeah,
It's the image of the beast test. It's the closed door.
yeah.
So to ask your question again, if I didn't answer it.
He's saying this now from Sunday law forward was the 3-step for the virgins that are gathered.
It's not that they move in to the most holy place with Christ right here in the Millerite history. In the Millerite history, you have two temple cleansings, right?
Yeah.
But at the broad level, from 1840 to 1844, you've got these three steps, but you've got two temple cleansings in that history also. But here, on October 22nd, 1844, the wise virgins move into the most holy place. They're gathered into the most holy place.
All right, so, okay.
You go there every time.
No, I ain't got a problem with that. I just want to get that right in my head, because there's two gatherings of virgins there, and they're both going through this process, but, so, the gathering of the virgins there at the end of...
If you're doing this fractal, the 12 months.
It's marking a different thing, that's all I want to establish.
Everyone follow his
He wants to see the
question?
two gatherings in the bigger picture. And
Yep,
it's hard to
Is that what
prove
you're
with
saying?
two things.
Here's a gathering here in the bigger picture, and here's a gathering
That's
here.
your first and second.
Okay, this is Peter,
I see.
right?
Yeah,
He's acknowledging 9/11.
okay.
So the people that acknowledge 9/11, they're going through this broad three-step testing process, and they're going to be lifted up as an ensign here. They're the ensign that's gathered and lifted up. But in this history, we know that there's priests and Levites purified.
What's your other proof for the priests and Levites other than 2 Chronicles 29? That's the other one that we allow, since we need the testimony of two.
Well, 2 Chronicles chapter 5
Has it again?
similar, I think.
Is there one in Ezekiel?
Where it divides them up like that.
Yeah, well, the way you do it, there's lots of witnesses. The way you do it is what Mark's doing. You show
Judah,
that the
Jerusalem.
priests are Judah and the Levites are Jerusalem, and then you've got the testimony of Judah, Jerusalem, all over the place.
Okay, so you go directly from priests and Levites and Chronicles, and then you prove Judah, Jerusalem.
Well, yeah,
and
you
then
proved it. If you
fill on
prove this is Judah,
Mhm.
then who is the high priest?
You prove this.
Who's our high priest?
Christ is our high priest.
Who is he?
Jesus,
Who is he?
Lion of the tribe of
Lion
Judah.
of the tribe of Judah. Okay.
Unsealing. Okay.
So it's by going Judah and Jerusalem that you get a second witness. There's probably other second witnesses without Judah and Jerusalem to the priests and the Levites. In fact, Sister Tanya sometimes brings up a purification process of the priests and the Levites. Is that in Exodus?
Actually, that is in Leviticus 8, I believe.
Leviticus 8.
But I want to point something out.
But I think it's 7 days there.
Yeah, okay.
But on the 8th day, they come out.
Yeah, on the 8th day, the 7-day purification process, and they're ready to stand on the 8th day.
In Exodus, after they received the Ten Commandments, Levites proved themselves worthy of being chosen because of the golden calf. So they're set aside right there, and that's in Exodus, 32, you're dealing with the golden calf, 33. And then in Leviticus 8, you have an explanation of how Aaron and his sons were set aside and consecrated for the services of the sanctuary.
Let's see that. So you're saying Leviticus 8 is just the priests?
Yeah, and in Exodus
Wait.
32, 33, where you have the dealing with the golden calf, that's where you see the Levites set aside.
Yeah, but how does that work? That doesn't work. That may all be true, but that's talking about the Levites being set aside before you even get to Leviticus. It's line upon line. You can show that the Levites are purified. They're separated there at the golden calf. But we're looking for something that priests and Levites in conjunction in order to show these two periods of time in Esther, the 180 days.
Could be a prophetic mirror.
Consecutive, but they're there. It's from Judah and Jerusalem. So Mordecai, I'm contending that Mordecai is a symbol of the Holy Spirit in this history. Okay, so Mordecai ultimately he gets placed right here, right? And he becomes aware of which decree that he's going to send to Esther.
The third.
The third decree, the decree that has the seal. What are the 3 decrees in this history that come from here? The first one is for Vashti to come in.
So he's also typifying Ezra 7:9 and Samuel Sheffield Snow in some ways, because they bring the third decree to that point. That's where it begins to
Perhaps.
go for.
And the second decree is to gather the virgins.
Yeah.
And the third decree is the one that Mordecai is aware of here, and he sent it on to Esther, and Esther says, I haven't been called in for these 30 days. So what are the 30 days she hasn't been called into?
9/11 to the midnight cry.
9/11 to the midnight cry. Where's she getting called in this story?
The midnight cry.
She's been getting called in here. She's the second gathering in this history.
There's another one in Ezekiel.
There, another one. What?
Another priests and Levites.
Yeah, I thought so. What is it?
Ezekiel 43:19. The priests received the Levites.
Ezekiel what?
43:19.
Is that it? Go, and it's the first day of the first month?
It didn't say the first day of the first month, but it said, And thou shalt give to the priests the Levites that be of the seed of Zadok, which approach unto me to minister unto me, saith the Lord God, a young bullock for a sin offering. That's one.
What do you mean? Why does that fit anything we're talking about?
It separates the two classes.
And it's consecutive.
Consecutive.
One time
Okay,
and
all right. That's not the one I was thinking of, but all right, we'll put that in the record. But back to what we're saying. Here, Esther, at the beginning of the 120 days, she's been called in the first gathering of the virgins, right? So she's representing Adventism at large. Yes?
Yes.
And in the fractal of it, in this 12 months, at the end of the 12 months, she goes into the king, and what does he do? He marries her, right? So you can see at the fractal, she gets married here, where we have marriages noted, the marriage at Cana. But in the larger one, she gets married here. This is the marriage of this waymark. But now when Mordecai sends her the third decree, she comes in here. What is she here? She's getting gathered here. She's a Levite. She's now the illustration of purification of the Levites. And how many days does her purification process marked? She hasn't been called in during this 30 days. But she wants them to pray and fast for 3 days to hear. Sister Tanya?
I was wondering if Ezra 8:15 would also apply with the gathering of the priests and then the Levites.
Read it.
And I gathered them together to the river that runneth to Ahava, and there abode we intense 3 days. And I viewed the people and the priest, and found there none of the sons of Levi.
Also, the priests were there, but the Levites
That's what
weren't.
I
Then he
said.
sent the Levites out, and that's at the first day.
It was just the priest first. There was no Levite available.
Yeah,
And then Sister I tells us that 40 priests were gathered.
And that's on the 15th day of the first month? Is that what it said?
They rode there 3 days.
3
and
days.
There was no Levites.
Okay, so here's 3 days. They leave on the
Yeah.
first day of the first month. They're right here at the midnight cry. The priests are there, but he's got to go back in and get the Levites.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Ezra.
8:15.
Okay. So when what's her name? Esther responds to the call here at 9/11 as a virgin. What is she? She's a priest. But in this next story, when she responds, she's a Levite.
Yeah.
So she's representing priests,
Classes.
Levites, and when she's married here, what is she representing? The church triumphant.
Triumphant.
The church triumphant. Okay.
An ensign.
And then she gives a fourth decree. We haven't figured out what her 5 requests are, but the first 1 through 3 we are noting back here are coming from Shushan. What justification do we have for doing that? Lots.
The divorce. That's an easy one.
The divorce.
I mean, if you're putting the 3 decrees as a divorce, they have and reign. You can. Is that what you're asking?
No, what do you?
When he
what are you talking about?
divorced
He divorced
Vashti.
Vashti.
So that's
No, you're defining the decrees. I'm saying where else do we see all 3 decrees?
Ezra.
Right here?
Ezra.
Ezra
Has them all with
7:9.
him in his hand.
And
Well, we understand that the Sunday law was put in place at 9/11. That's the third.
not put in place. Bad way to say it.
Okay, it was
It was there.
okay.
They were ready to do it.
And we also got quotes from Sister White says the third angel comes down right there. But then we've got many other quotes that break it down and say you can't have a third without a first and second. They must be given in their order.
So the combined
Okay.
work.
So the combining work. So all 3 of them are right there at 9/11.
So you have all 3 of the decrees in Esther are being, by context, lined up with 9/11. And the fact that that Ezra came out of Babylon on the first day of the first month, representing 9/11. He has the 3rd decree in his hand. You can't have the 3rd without a 1st and 2nd. They're all there. So we got lots of reasons for placing them all there. What else?
The combining work in Ezra.
Yeah,
That's pretty much
that
how we do
justifies
things.
all of that right there. Then she has a decree here that they can defend themselves, and here is where Haman dies on the gallows. The gallows have to be built. That's in this history. That's the image of the beast. But the image of the beast in the Sunday law test is going to confront the entire world. This is the death of Haman. It is the death of the United States. And this is where the 7th kingdom, a Bible prophecy, begins. And somewhere in here, the 7th kingdom, I'm going to put, this is a noose. This is a noose, a gallows.
Where's the 8th?
The 8th begins. Here the 6th ends and the 7th begins. Here the 7th dies and the 8th begins. And we're lining this up with what?
10 sons.
Universal Sunday law.
Okay. Is that what we're lining it up with?
Yep.
So we will put USL. What happens then?
The 8th
Michael stands.
fully.
Close of probation. Michael stands up.
Right at the Universal Sunday law.
Some
Just that's just
Oh,
hard for
yeah.
me to picture for some reason.
She says it would just be a short amount of time.
But that's
when she talks about
simultaneous,
that.
but that's all right. That's my own problem.
there's some tricks there.
Yeah, it's all
Because these 10 kings are going to, when the 8th kingdom's in place, you have the 8th, 7th, and 6th reigning simultaneously. This is the sixth kingdom, 666. But there is a short space that they reign. And now some people are tempted to say, okay, if you're going to mark this, then the 1 hour would begin here and go to there, but the 1 hour begins back here. That's what is difficult to see, is that the Sunday law crisis is the 1 hour, and this transition from the 6th, 7th to the 8th kingdom, I got it spread out here, but it's really rapid. The final movements will be a rapid one.
Matter of weeks.
No, that's 7 last plagues.
We split up last time with Sunday law in the United States, Sunday law universal, and then we put the close of probation.
Yeah. It was written on the board like that.
Close the probation here?
No, it's a big line. You put COP, and then the 7 last page came after it. That's
No,
what
I didn't. I put the death decree. We got it recorded. Death decree.
The decree comes
Yep,
after
you're right.
the close of probation, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's how we did, so.
Okay, so what I'm telling you is that there's some people that struggle over this 1 hour. What do I mean by that?
When it starts.
Revelation 17. Go to Revelation 17, verses 12 through 14. Whose turn to read? Revelation 17.
12 through what?
12 through 14.
And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful.
Okay, so the 10 kings are going to make war with Christ for 1 hour. Okay, so the 1 hour begins so close to the Sunday law. That this is Revelation 17 isn't talking about 3 periods of time, the 6th kingdom, the 7th kingdom, and the 8th kingdom. It's emphasizing the very end of the 6th kingdom. It's saying the 7th kingdom, he only continues a short space.
That's what I'm saying, that's what I was just thinking. Is the short space and the 1 hour the same thing?
No, what it's saying, the short space, this is how long the 7th kingdom reigns until the 8th kingdom comes into place.
Yeah.
But an hour is a short amount of time, and a short space is a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Is that what he's trying to tell us? It's just...
No, but it's saying that what they're going to reign with the 8th. They're going to reign with the papacy for 1 hour. Okay, the reigning for the 1 hour is when the papacy is in connection with the 10 kings. But who's the head of the 10 kings?
United States.
The United States. And when does the United States commit fornication with the papacy? Sunday law. So this history here is a rapid history. It's separated here so we can make sense of the waymarks. But the 1 hour there is the time of persecution of the Sunday law crisis.
In 1712, do they actually receive a kingdom, or do they just receive power?
Yeah, they receive a kingdom, but John is placed. In verse 3, John is carried away to the wilderness. And in Revelation 12, verses 6 and 14, it identifies the wilderness of the 1260 years. So in verse 3, John's taken to the 1260 years. Then in verse 4 and 5, he sees the papacy setting up on a beast. She's drunk with the blood of the martyrs, which means he's seeing the papacy at the end of the 1260 years, because the martyrdom of the 1260 years has already taken place. She's already drank that wine. And Sister White tells us, and history tells us, that the persecution ended 25 years before 1798. So John is seeing this woman at the very end of the 1260 years, and she's called the mother of harlots, which means some of the Protestant reformers have already went back to Rome because she already has daughters. This is in the 1798 time period. So when John sees this vision, he says, that's the United States, and one is yet to come, and when he cometh, he shall continue a short space. The 7th kingdom is not in existence in 1798. But when he does come, at the end of the 70 years of Isaiah 23, at the Sunday law in the United States, He'll continue just for a very brief. It's purposely putting a double emphasis for 1 hour, a short
See
space.
the forming of that kingdom in Revelation 13.
You see the forming of that kingdom in Revelation 13. The United States speaks as a dragon and immediately goes out to deceive the world and say, you need to set up an image of the beast too. And the United States has power to make that image both speak and command all to receive the mark of the beast. It's a very... In fact, if you're going to accept the concept that the building of Haman's gallows and the hanging of Haman here is the Sunday law, and by the way, Sister White not repeatedly, but more than once, says that this history of Ezra is identifying the Sunday law time periods, Esther. So we have reason to see that Haman being hung here is the Sunday law. If you're willing to accept that, what was I going to say?
It was only
Oh.
one day or something like that.
Yeah, the gallows is already built for the 10 sons. It's already there. So I mean, it's what has to get built in theory in the 24 hours for Haman's story, or in the night. It's already standing there for these 10.
So where are you starting the 8th? Right there? Are you starting?
It would be right in here
Okay,
somewhere.
you're starting there.
Be right in here.
Couple of thoughts. Sister White also compares Esther's story with Lot's story being pulled out of Sodom and Gomorrah. And I was wondering if the 50 gallons have anything to do with the 50 days or 50 people that there would be in Sodom and Gomorrah that the Lord would...
I'm not familiar with that, and I don't know if those 50 people would be the gallows. But in any case, did you get that point? It took a night, it took a period of time to build the gallows, which allows you to see the setting up of the image of the beast and then Haman's hung. But it's the same gallows that his 10 sons are going to be hung on. But they really don't even have to build it, it's already built.
It's already set up.
Meaning that it's even less of an emphasis on a period of time than it is in Haman's story. In Haman, it only took one night to build it. This is the trick of this history, this 1 hour and all this. Very rapid.
It has to be.
The 1 hour workers that replacing them at the Sunday that are being gathered, we're also told in Mordecai that a lot of them join them because of their fear. But in Ezra 8:20 is also telling us that after they gathered the Levites, they also had the Nethinims, who were 220, which were appointed for the service of the Levites. So
Okay, I don't know about that, but one thing I do like that you sparked a thought here. That's another definition for this 1 hour. Okay. The 11th hour workers, they come out at the Sunday law. You can show that all over the place. They're the 1 hour laborers. The 1 hour laborers is corresponding to the 1 hour that the 10 kings agree to give their king to the beast and persecute Christ in the form of his followers. So this is a witness that starts this 1 hour at the Sunday law.
When the 1 hour starts, can people die in that time period?
Are there Christians dying today?
yeah.
I mean, that's such a...
No. Can people die from persecution in
Yes.
the 1 hour?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Why would you ask that question?
Well,
Why
because
wouldn't
you have 8 under the close of probation, and you were saying the 8th kingdom would start.
8 needs to be moved over.
So I was confused what you were saying.
Well, what we said yesterday was this, now that I think about it.
Killed.
Haman's sons were killed first and thereafter hung
Yep.
on the... So this would be the end of the 7th kingdom, the beginning of the 8th. Okay? The 7th kingdom dies here.
Yeah.
They die there, not hung on the gallows. I was going to put the gallows up here. But then they're marking the curse
Yeah.
here.
So between that time is, I see.
So
No.
that's
That, I know what you're trying to
That's
say, but
confusing.
no,
No,
not
I'm-
between that time. From here,
To there.
the 11th hour workers come out, and the 11th hour workers are also what?
The 1 hour.
The 1 hour laborers. Do all the prophets agree?
Yeah.
The 1 hour laborers, the 1 hour begins at the Sunday law in the
Because
United States.
all the persecution will begin there, whether it's just one or two
Then they
countries,
have
then
to-
it's going to increase,
Then they have to be with the beast at that point. They have to, the kingdom's at, then you'd have to mark 7, 8,
Oh, now wait a
Sunday
minute,
law.
wait a minute. Maybe everyone else understood you, but what's it mean they have to be with the beast?
I'm saying if for 1 hour they give their power to the beast and they reign simultaneously, then if we're marking the 11th hour worker as the same hour, then you would have to mark it at the Sunday law.
That's
the
what
way-
I'm trying
yeah.
to say. You can mark it at the Sunday law, but you're gonna then you have arguments to mark it at the Sunday law, but then you have counter arguments. Revelation 17 describes a 6th, a 7th, and an 8th kingdom. It's describing a process. And we've dealt with this in issues like the Day of the Lord. You can mark the Day of the Lord at the Sunday law. You can mark the Day of the Lord at the close of probation. You can mark the Day of the Lord at the end of the 1,000 years, or you can mark the Day of the Lord as a period of time beginning at the Sunday law and going to the end of the 1,000 years. So this is the Sunday law in the United States. This is the universal Sunday law. But this whole period of time is the Sunday law crisis. And during this period of time, there is a setting up of this final kingdom, the 6th kingdom that has 3 parts. But if you want to see how Sister White relates to it, someone type in hand across Gulf. Because she's going to talk about, you can read it, that at the same time the United States is clasping the hand of the Roman power, which is the Sunday law, she's also clasping the hand of the dragon. Okay?
Yeah.
Someone got one of those? There's
She's-
more than
she's
one.
It's a
working on it.
threefold union.
Yes, the threefold union is here, but it's in Revelation 17. It's a 6th, a 7th, 17. It's a 6th, 7th, and 8th.
I got it.
So then the 1 hour is from the Sunday law to the close of probation, and the significance of the 8th king replacing the 7th at that point in time. I was just thinking, where is the bloodbath?
The significance of the 6th and 7th and 8th king is that you need to understand the progression of events. Okay, Revelation 17 is saying there's a 6th kingdom. When he comes to his end, the 7th kingdom begins, and the 8th is of the 7. Okay, and in Revelation 13, when the 6th kingdom comes to its end, it has spoken as a dragon, and then it's portrayed as going out and telling the world that you must repeat what we just did. You must set up an image of the beast that also speaks. So Bible prophecy in Daniel 11, which is parallel, it's showing a 3-step testing process. King of the south, glorious land, Egypt. It's showing us a progression, but at another level, it takes place pretty much simultaneously at the Sunday law. Brother Tyler, read us one of them.
Okay, here it is. I'll read some. Start. Through the 2 great errors, the immortality of the soul and Sunday sacredness, Satan will bring the people under his deceptions. While the former lays the foundation of spiritualism, the latter creates a bond of sympathy with Rome. The Protestants of the United States will be the foremost in stretching their hands across the gulf to grasp the hand of spiritualism. They will reach over the abyss to clasp with the Roman power. And under the influence of this threefold union, this country will follow in the steps of Rome in trampling on the rights of conscience.
There's a better one. The one you need to look up. It says,
Maybe Christy has it.
That's the one we had.
Oh, it's
the one that we need to look up is when she talks about the threefold union. She says, then we'll know that the time has come for the marvelous working of Satan. Type in
Here it is.
marvelous. Okay.
When Protestantism shall stretch her hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of the Roman power, when she shall reach over the abyss to clasp hands with spiritualism, when under the influence of this threefold union our country shall repudiate every principle of its constitution as a Protestant and Republican government, and shall make provisions for the propagation of papal falsehoods and delusions, then we may know that the time has come for the marvelous working of Satan, and the end is near.
When is the marvelous working of Satan marked? Revelation 13:13. The United States speaks as a dragon in verse 11, and exercises all the power of the first beast before it in verse 12, and then in verse 13 you see the marvelous working of Satan manifested. Even there you can say, well, there's 3 verses there, and even in what he read, they first stretched their hand across to the Roman power, and then they stretch it across to spiritualism. So there you can even read into a little bit of a process there. But primarily, it says when the United States passes this Sunday law, what has it done? It's made provision for the propagation. Is that what it says? Because it's going to go propagate these concepts to the world. So there is a period of time, but there isn't.
It says under the influence of this threefold union, so we can already see, yeah, it's progressive, but also they're like together.
If you don't get this, one of the hardest verses that we've dealt with, and people haven't challenged us on it because they haven't been following this message. They've assigned this message as foolishness, and then those people that were in this message that have walked away, they're not dissecting what's being taught. They're attacking the messengers that they're opposed to. But the most difficult verse is verse 3 of Revelation 18. But when you see this, verse 3 of Revelation 18 is resolved.
All the kings.
Because it says at 9:11, she's committed fornication with all the kings of the earth. She's already done it here. They've already formed this relationship not only to pass a Sunday law, but they've already, behind the scenes, they're already in bed. What they have to propagate under the satanic delusions of Satan in this history isn't to convince the 10 kings or the United States, it's to convince the people of the world.
Can we find out where Jason read from first?
Where did you read from, Jason?
Testimonies. Right?
Volume 5?
Testament, volume 5.
Page?
This is LDE.
Last Day Events.
451.
451. Testimonies, Volume 5, page 451.
To answer Michael's question, we got 3 witnesses that mark the persecution or the martyrs in the Sunday law. You got Daniel being thrown in the lion's den, you got John the Baptist being beheaded, and you got Stephen being stoned as the first martyr for Christ, and they all mark that.
Yes.
When do they start taking people prisoner? Or when do people go to the court? Is that the midnight cry?
No, we're not dealing with
Sunday
that.
law?
We're not dealing with that. We're getting too far off the scope. It's progressive.
When did it start though? When's the first person taken to?
Christ was put there before the cross.
Did the Sunday laws in the 1890s fulfill Revelation 13:11? Do you know that there was a movement for Sunday legislation in the 1890s in the United States, right?
Yeah.
In some states, they were worse than others. What was the worst state in the United States for Sunday law? Arkansas.
and Tennessee.
But Arkansas. But you're saying Tennessee?
Both.
Okay, both. Okay.
Arkansas was, yeah, they made it on chain gang.
There's people that died in Arkansas over it. But was that the Sunday law that fulfilled Bible prophecy?
No.
What was it?
It was a blue law.
It was the Sunday laws that were leading to the United States speaking as a dragon. Okay? So, is there Sunday laws that lead to the Sunday law that fulfills Bible prophecy here at the end of the world?
State laws.
When do they begin?
Midnight cry.
At the midnight cry. So there is blue laws coming in here. Are
Say it
people?
like that?
Is
Well, you
people
could say
going to
people
get
already
arrested
died.
in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you just said the state laws were it wasn't a national Sunday law, they were state laws, but people died.
Yeah.
Then you could say, in theory, people die at the midnight cry. due to
Yes,
this.
you can. I'm not threatened by that. This is going to be such an issue that all the world is going to be focused on what's going on. You know, from what I heard on the internet yesterday, somebody stabbed 3 people in a university. None of them died yesterday. But how many people do you think in Africa heard about that in their news yesterday?
Not one.
What goes on here in the United States, the whole world's going to hear about. That's what prophecy is saying in this period. So what's going on is going to be dramatic enough that it's going to have people going to court and those kind of activities taking place.
So it's not necessarily, at some level, it's the state power that persecutes, but it's the chain gangs, it's your neighbor who persecutes you at one level. Because that was most of the persecution, I guess, at And during that Sunday law.
A state law doesn't qualify. It's got to be a federal law.
No, I know, but it marks the progress. I'm saying a
What's it
persecuting
mark?
power.
What's it mark? The progressive right. But what is it marking?
Amendment?
It's marking the mentality of the citizens of the United States. As the judgments escalate, as Islam's role escalate, the people in the United States are going to become more militant in the direction that they're going, and in the states they're going to begin this process. If you want to look closely, when the Congress passes a law, it's different than what at least is inferred the Congress is going to do at the Sunday law. What is the Sunday law? Is it a law?
Yes.
Yeah, sort of, but not really. What does Sister White talk about the approaching Sunday law when she was dealing with it in the 1890s? What does she call it? An amendment. You type in amendment. She says these reformers that are pushing for an amendment, okay? And what's an amendment?
You add it to.
What is an amendment to the Constitution?
Add to.
Yes, but how do you have to have an amendment?
Constitutional convention.
You have to have the states vote upon it, not just the Congress.
It takes
State and Congress.
It's an amendment to the Constitution. It's a bigger deal than simply the Congress passing a law. Now, I'm not positive that's the way it's going to fly, but when Sister Wright was talking about in 1890, she's talking about an amendment. An amendment requires that not only the Congress initiates the law, but the states have to ratify it.
So are you suggesting that maybe on Midnight Cry, that these Sunday laws, these blue laws have been kind of hidden, people have even forgotten they existed, will they be brought onto the surface?
Or new ones, yeah. Yeah, for certain. I'm not suggesting that. That's clear in the spirit of prophecy. Sister White says, if we would understand how the Sunday law comes in, we but have to look how it came in the past ages. Then she goes into the time of Constantine, and she describes about the exaltation of Sunday and the downplaying of the Sabbath, and she gives a long history, and when she gets done with that history, she says, she identifies there came a point where you were forbidden to worship on Sabbath, persecuted for worship on Sabbath, and forced to worship on Sunday, and that is her definition of the Sunday law. There is an escalation of Sunday exaltation and the downplaying of the Sabbath in this history. The mindset's already here. All these people we're living around, they think Sunday is the Lord's day. But you throw in disasters, economic collapse,
Islam.
crazy religious leaders, crazy political figures starting to point fingers at people.
Islam.
Yeah, Islam.
I'm recognizing that the mindset of the United States, of the people of the United States, they're being set up like there wasn't communism, to where the people, their own neighbors, there were people assigned that they would be spying on their neighbors and they would turn in to the authorities.
Okay.
And like Germany too.
So, in Esther, we have marked 5 decrees. The 3 that we're seeing starting here. The 4th of here, when Esther is the queen and Haman has died, asking the king to allow God's people to defend themselves, which the final deliverance is being typified there. And then there's the decree upon 2 witnesses of Esther and Mordecai to commemorate this deliverance. Okay, and yesterday I'm arguing that this 3 days of Purim that's commemorated for 2 days is an illustration of the judgment that's represented by the 7 thunders. Do the 7 thunders represent judgment? Have you ever heard the people in Adventism, as long as you've been an Adventist, some of these guys that emphasize righteousness by faith, they go to Revelation 14 where it says the hour of his judgment has come, and they teach that the hour of his judgment, it's God is being judged. You ever heard that teaching? Okay, because it's during this time that the universe and mankind is looking at God's character and judging him.
Morrison preached that.
Who?
Morrison preached that.
Morrison?
Yeah, the guy from Walla Walla. Am I saying that wrong?
Morris
Morris
Vanden?
Vanden.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, a lot of them teach that, but the point is this history here from 1989 to the Sunday Law, this seven thunders, and this history here from 1798 to 1844, this history here is the opening of the judgment, and this is the close of the judgment. Okay, so here's two witnesses that the seven thunders is what? It's the judgment. Was ancient Israel?
Leviticus 26 tells us
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's adding into it the 7 times, the curse of the 7 times. What I'm saying is, you got the judgment of the dead beginning here. You got the judgment of the living here. You have the judgment on Babylon. The 7 thunders, this is the judgment of ancient, literal Israel, Judah, being carried into captivity. This is the 3 decrees in this 7 thunders that begin the 2300 days, which is telling us when the judgment's going to begin. The last 7 kings of Israel, when they're carried into captivity, this is the judgment of the 7 times. So if we understand that Purim is based upon Lot, and Lot is judgment, then our logic is that what we're commemorating in the 2 days of Purim is the delineation of events that took place under the first and second angel's message. It concludes with the third. It's the 7 thunders. Therefore, I'm arguing that the book of Esther, which is a fractal out of this line, is emphasizing the truth about the 7 thunders representing the time of judgment, which we're living in now in a variety of ways. I'm not too threatened by the idea that at the Sunday Law, when the ensign's lifted up, the universe is passing judgment on Christ. So is the world. Because when we're lifted up as an ensign and we're faithful, we're going to be in contradiction with Barabbas. Okay, the world's going to be choosing between Christ and Barabbas.
The world.
There is a type of judgment that's taking place by all mankind, and that's the story of Jehoshaphat, the Valley of Jehoshaphat.
I think as far as who's going to be turning us in, it will be ex-Adventists more so than our neighbors. If we treat our neighbors as Christ would, then we may be bringing them in more so than our ex-Adventists. They will be.
It's up to them.
Yeah, but our greatest persecution comes from within. Our greatest.
Yeah, but it prepares us for the persecution that follows. What are you going to say?
Question and a comment. The comment is, if we break up the first angel's message on a 3-part, fear God at 9/11, give him glory at the midnight cry for the hour of his judgment, that's another witness for the hour being starting at the Sunday Law. Because that's the hour of his judgment.
Yes.
And then also a comment on the 7 thunders. I see how you've labeled them Manasseh, the progressive fall of literal Israel. But when you're labeling the progressive fall of spiritual Israel down here, isn't that really from 1798 till the Sunday Law, that 7 thunders in a huge scale?
Oh, yeah.
Or how are you labeling them in 2 little scales? Are you doing the
Fractals.
1798 to 1844 as the 7 thunders?
Yeah, it is, because she says so. This is the delineation of events that transpired
But
in the
what's
first
the
second.
other label on that side? The big one is a big one.
This is the future events that will be disclosed in their order, but this is the beginning and ending of Adventism.
I see that as a large scale, but what are you labeling just our history? What's that 7 thunders? Just ours alone.
1989.
See, you've labeled the progressive fall of Israel from 1798.
The progressive fall of Judah requires that 2 entities are conquered, because Judah back here in the time of Manasseh was Judah and Benjamin. Here,
I see the 2
Benjamin
ones.
falls here, Judah falls.
So they have to be connected. The 2 thunders of the Millerites in our period have to be connected with the same label, or can you separate them?
Yeah, they
by
need to be
label?
connected, because
Okay.
Jesus illustrates the end with the beginning.
Okay.
This is the same story, only different,
Okay. Got it.
perhaps.
A request, can you go over the 5 degrees of Esther real quick again?
Okay, the first decree is
The divorce.
the divorce decree, all right? The second decree is to gather the virgins. The third decree is the seal decree, then the persecution of Haman. The fourth decree is Esther's request that they can defend themselves, the deliverance. The fifth decree is Purim, that's put in place by Esther and Mordecai upon 2 witnesses, commemorating judgment.
versions.
If it doesn't has the word decree, we're just gonna apply it as that.
It does. I think I never looked for that, but I think all of them do. What are you saying no for?
No, I haven't seen the word decree used with what with Mordecai, what he sent out, so I was just wondering,
You haven't.
maybe I missed it.
Maybe not.
On the last one, 9:14,
9:14.
is that right? Is that the
What's
last
it
one?
say?
The decree was given at Shushan?
Yep.
That was to hang.
No,
the
that's the
10
fourth one.
That's the word.
That was just on the third decree.
Yeah, in verse
9:32
8:8.
9:32.
is the.
And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim.
Oh, 9.
It's no, that's the fifth. You said
Yep.
9:32.
Thank
And the
you.
fourth is for them to defend themselves. That's
The final deliverance.
But I thought that was Haman, where Haman dies also, or is that
Haman's decree is to kill the Jews. That's the third decree.
third decree?
But when Haman's dead, then Esther makes a request to the king that the Jews can defend themselves at the time period when Haman's decree is going to be put into place.
Did any of the Jews die when Haman made the decree?
We don't have any evidence that any of them died.
So the decree of Esther is the fourth decree, yeah.
The decree of Esther is the fourth decree.
her first decree, because she made another, the Purim decrees, her and Mordecai's decree. Right?
Okay. And then the fifth decree is Purim. And we've without Esther, we've seen five. Well, we haven't seen. We're using Esther to mark 5 decrees for us, because we know Sunday law decree, we know universal Sunday law is a decree, and we know the death decree is a decree. But we are using Esther and other lines of prophecy to suggest that the Patriot Act is the first decree, and that there will be some kind of speaking of the United States that marks the arrival of the midnight cry. Brother Chuck, you want to pray?
Father in heaven, we come to you again this morning to thank you and praise you for another day of life, for sustaining our lives another day. We pray that you'll be with us, with the Holy Spirit within us, to guide and direct us as we go through this day. We pray that you be with those that are being attacked by Satan in different parts of the world, and especially in this ministry. We pray that you will lead and guide each one according to your need. We pray for guidance as we go through this day. Help us to live for you, for Jesus, and for others. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.